Hi, I'm Holly with Stella Mari's Quilts. Welcome back to our series on 50 blocks for 50 states using the designs from this book. Information on that is in the description box below, as well as information about the adaptations we've made and the patterns that we've written with step-by-step instructions. Today we're going to work on the block for Kentucky. So let's go ahead and grab a cup of tea and get started. For the Kentucky block, we're going to need 4 3.5-inch squares of our light, 2 diamonds, 4 3.5 by 7-inch rectangles. We're going to need 4 60-degree triangles out of our dark, and we're going to need 2 diamonds out of our dark. I'm going to quickly demonstrate how to cut the 60-degree triangles and diamonds. So out of your strip of fabric, what you're going to do is you're going to use your 60-degree ruler, and mine has lines that say, you know, if you need a finished of 3 inches tall, then you're going to have a 3.5-inch strip because it has a notch at the top. That's what you really want to use, is this. If you don't have a 60-degree ruler and all you have is your standard ruler with a 60-degree line, you can still make these cuts. You just might need a slightly wider strip because you're going to have a point coming up at the top. So I'm just going to lay this down on my strip so that the line for which size I'm using is along this bottom edge of my strip here. And the first thing I'm going to do is then I'm going to cut off the side here, and then I'm going to cut along the side here, and that's going to give me my 60-degree triangles. I already have what I need, so now I just need to cut my diamonds. To cut my diamonds, you're going to have your angle cut, and then diamonds are the same size measured in from the angle as the height of the strip. So this strip is 3.5, so I want to measure in from this angled edge 3.5 inches. Just going to make sure my fabric is lined up properly there. And then I'm going to drop my ruler down. 1, 2, 3.5. And then I'm just going to cut. And there is my diamond. You can always double check your diamond, because if it's the right cut, when you fold it in half, the points will meet up and you'll have a 60-degree triangle. Now that we have the starting pieces, we need to prepare some of our placement pieces. For this, we're going to need some 60-degree angles cut from our squares and rectangles. You're going to want a right side angle and a left angle. So you want to make sure that your fabric is right sides together, which mine is here. And by doing that, you're going to get both the right side and the left side with one cut. So I'm going to just stack up my squares. And you can use the 60-degree line on your other ruler, or you can just use your 60-degree triangle ruler. But I'm going to line my ruler up here all the way to the corner, and I'm just going to cut an angle. I'm going to do the same thing with my 7-inch rectangles here. Make sure they're right sides together, which they were when I cut them, so they are still. Make sure they're nice and lined up. And then I'm just going to put my ruler down. You really don't need to worry about where the point's coming off, as long as one of the lines on your ruler is straight with the bottom edge of your fabric here. And you're all the way up to the corner. And then I'm just going to cut. And now we get to just lay out the block. I'm going to start by putting my piece up here. Okay, and that's what the block looks like with it all laid out. So we're basically going to just sew together the rows and then sew the rows together. Now, all of these are angles, so we're going to talk a minute about how to do that. The 60-degree triangle that I'm using to cut things has this top notch where it helps to line things up. So you see how it's cut on this piece here. When I go to sew these two pieces together, that notch tells me where that 60-degree seam, not 60-degree, where the 1/4 inch seam is going to come off right here. So if I was going to sew, let's see, what would be a good example? Well, you see how it's hanging off at the bottom here? If I was to line that notch up with the edge here, this would then be a perfect seam by sewing from here across. And that notch is telling me where that 1/4 inch mark is for the hangover. So I'm just going to sew one of these together, and I might actually come through and trim the notches off of all of my 60-degree points just to help with lining everything up. You don't have to. If you're not going to do that, then you would just make sure that you have a slight hangover, like you can see right here, where I've got some point coming off the end, and this point where they intersect is my 1/4 inch seam. So to sew this all together, basically I'm just going to fold this over, line everything up so that I have that 1/4 inch seam. I'm going to sew, and then I'm going to press this back, then I'm going to add this side and then press it back. And then across here where I've got the diamonds, I'm going to do the very same process. These are all 60-degree angles. So I'm going to lay one on top of the other. I'm going to have my 1/4 inch that hangs over on the edge where the intersection point is my 1/4 inch seam. I'm going to sew across, and then I'll press it back, and I'll just keep adding all the way along. So now I've sewn each of the rows together individually. The next step is to sew the rows all together for the block. Some of these points are going to line up nicely because it's a 60-degree angle lining up with a 60-degree nice right on that seam. So you can nest those. Other points are not going to line up quite so easily. They're going to actually overlap. So you're going to want to see where that 1/4 inch seam is going to be. Peel it back so you can see if the line is going to continue nice and straight and if it's going to meet up. I find that on points like this, I like to put a pin in it just to hold it in place while I'm sewing and help me to keep those points as close to perfect as possible. So just take your time, be careful, and line everything up as best as you can and sew the rows together, and then you'll have your final block. And here's the finished Kentucky block. Thank you for joining me today working on the Kentucky block. Please make sure you hit subscribe so that you don't miss out on the future blocks in the series. Until next time, have a great day and happy quilting.